Hi, welcome to Glow's Kinder Kitchen, and I'm Glow. Well, today I decided that I would make a dessert for us, and it's called Blarney Stones. And it's in one of my cookbooks, Taste of Home, and this one's from 2003. And
oh, but a goodie.
Here's the recipe. I haven't made these myself either, but they sound very good, and I really don't have any reservations about making this. Everything I have made out of this particular cookbook has been very good. So this is from a lady by the name of Bridget Jones, and she's from Vallejo, Utah. And she said in here that when she was in high school, she used to work for a family that were Irish, and every St. Patrick's Day they would make these. And what it is, it sounds like it's a rich cake, and then you freeze it afterwards. You cut it into squares and you freeze it. And then the next day you frost it, and then you roll it in finely, chopped up peanuts. So I thought it would be a fun thing to do. And I looked up about the Blarney Stone, and it says a person that can kiss that, it gives them the gift of eloquence and persuasiveness. And the Blarney Stone, I guess you have to bend backwards to kiss it. And some people probably have fallen. I don't know for sure on that. I do know a couple of people that have done it over there. They say Ireland's a great place to go visit, and we haven't been able to do that yet, but maybe one of these days we will.
How big is this stone?
To be honest, I'm not really sure. It's in like a castle area, so that's something we should probably look up. And maybe I'll look that up before I do the frosting, and we can talk about that. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. I'm just going to half this recipe because it calls for a 9 by 13, and it's just the two of us, so I'm going to do it in a dish like this. And then I'm going to cut it into squares after it cools before I put it in the freezer. And the reason I selected this dish is I have a top that fits on here, so for when it goes into the freezer. So anyway, I will, at the end of this video, I will put at the bottom of it the recipe for the 9 by 13. And like I said, I'm just going to half it today. So it calls for eggs, sugar, flour. There's 3/4 of a cup of sugar here plus an additional 1/8, and the same with the flour, 3/4 of a cup plus an additional 1/8. And then there is, for the baking powder, there's 1½ teaspoons of baking powder and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And it also calls for butter, which I melted, 1/8 of a cup I have in here, along with 1/2 cup of milk, whole milk. And then it also calls for a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla for the half recipe. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and let's first of all do the eggs. And of course you want your eggs at room temperature. If you don't have your eggs at room temperature, which sometimes I don't, I put them in some warm water, and actually I'll put a link at the bottom of this for how to do that as well.
Because that video's already on YouTube.
Yeah. So this egg looks fine.
Looks good, Miss Glow.
So I'm going to go ahead and put it in here. Price of eggs today, you don't want to get a surprise and have an egg that's not nice, and then you got to start all over with everything. And that egg looks good.
Looks good, Miss Glow.
So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. And I'm just going to put this over here in my warm sudsy water. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my sugar in here. And my vanilla. Well, it's just 1/2 teaspoon. So now all we have to do for this is to beat this up with my beater, and I have my beaters already plugged in, pushed in, and I have my beater plugged into the wall. But never put your beaters in while your unit is plugged in.
No,
that's
unsafe at any speed.
Yeah. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. should be beating this for about 4 minutes or until it becomes thick and like a nice pretty lemon color. So let's take a look at that so you can see what it looks like so far.
Looks good.
And I'm going to go ahead and beat this. I'll be back with you in about 4 minutes. Hi. Well, look here. Let's stop this. It's been 4 minutes. You can see what this looks like.
Looks good.
Looks yummy. So, and it has become a little bit thick and like the lemon color like it says. And now I've got my flour and my baking powder and my salt mixed up in here. And it says that I'm supposed to add it to the egg mixture. So I'm going to go ahead and spoon this in. But I can just do this. There's a little bit more in here. I'm going to go ahead and just stir this around a little. By doing that, that's going to prevent it from kicking up on us and getting dust everywhere. There we go. And now we're just supposed to blend this on the low speed until it's combined. Just scrape this sides of the bowl here a little. Okay, now you can see how it's gotten thicker.
Yep.
And it's nice and combined. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add that 1/2 cup of butter or 1/2 cup of milk and the 1/8 cup of melted butter. So I'm going to go ahead and slowly pour that in as it's mixing. I'm going to stop it for a moment. You can see how the butter kind of coagulated and got on the sides here because it's been sitting there since I melted it. And of course, going in that cold milk too didn't help it. I'm just going to blend this now. We're supposed to mix this well. There. So, I'm going to go ahead and just set this over here. So see what it looks like?
Looking good.
Mm-hmm. So now all we have to do is pour this into a buttered pan, and I did spray it lightly, but I'm going to spray it again. One little tip is when you're going to spray your pans, always do it over your kitchen sink or over your counter. I know of a lady that would spray it over her floor, and guess what? It was slick, and she slipped and fell and fractured her hip. So, just a tip. So I'm going to move this is what I put underneath my mixing bowl so that my bowl doesn't slip and slide all over the place.
There's a video on that too.
Yeah, there is. So I'm going to go ahead and pour this in my buttered dish. So this is going to be like a yellow cake. And I have my oven preheated to 350 degrees. Now it says it takes 30 to 35 minutes to cook or to bake, but I don't think it's going to take that long. I may be wrong, but I'm going to check this in 25 minutes because I'm using a smaller pan. This is like an 8x8. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in my oven. I'll check it in 25 minutes and we'll be back just as soon as it's done. Hi, well our cake just took 25 minutes, kind of like I guessed, and just have it here cooling on this rack Once it's totally cool, that's when we're going to be cutting it into squares. And then we'll put it in the freezer overnight. And then tomorrow I will frost it and put the nuts on it. And that's when I'll bring you back. And we'll frost it together and put the peanuts on it. And then, of course, we'll sample it. So anyway, I'll talk to you later. Bye. Well, I'm back. It's the next day. And now it's time for us to make the frosting and then frost these Blarney Stones and roll them in nuts. And the cake has been in the freezer. It's still in the freezer. I did cut it into squares yesterday before I put it in. And I'm going to leave it in there till we're ready to frost it, because I think that's one of the keys, just from, you know, experience, that it probably will frost much easier with it being frozen. So let's go ahead and make the frosting. Now, if you recall, I halved this recipe. The original recipe calls for 7½ cups of powdered sugar, or 2 pounds. So that means that for a pound of sugar, it's 3 and about 1/4 cup of powdered sugar, and that's what I have in here. And then it calls for 1/3 cup of milk. I have a little bit over that in this measuring cup, and the reason I have that is just in case we need it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pour this milk in here. I'll reserve some of it. I'll reserve that bottom part there just in case we need it. It also calls for 1/16 of a teaspoon of salt. So the original recipe says for 1/8, so half of that is 1/16. So I don't have a 1/16 measuring spoon, but I did have 1/8, and I looked at it, and then I have these little measuring spoons, and I'm going to use the smallest one, and it's called a smidgen. So I'm going to use that instead, and I think that'll probably be fine, because I definitely don't want this to be over salted because of the nuts that we're going to be rolling this in. And the other thing that we're going to be putting in is 1 teaspoon of real vanilla extract. And the original recipe calls for 2 because it's, you know, a full recipe, but this is just 1/2. So there we go. So I'm going to just kind of stir this up in here a little bit so it can help prevent this powdered sugar, the dust going all over. But just from gathering of how this is going to be, I think this frosting is going to be a little runny. But that's good because it'll be much easier to frost. And then, of course, we're going to be rolling it in those nuts. And the recipe says to just do this until the frosting is smooth. So let's take a look at that. That looks smooth, doesn't it?
Yes.
So
You need to put your grabber under your bowl, Miss Glow.
yeah, I do.
That's another video.
Yeah, and I didn't do that. But I didn't have a problem with it here for some reason.
Oh, I'm just suggesting.
Yep, you're right. I should have done that. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and unplug my beaters. And now I'm going to release them. Always make sure you have it unplugged.
And that bottle's not in the way.
It's empty. So I'm going to go ahead and just put these beaters over here. I'm going to rinse them off a little. And just put them in my sink of sudsy water. So I'm going to go ahead and put this stuff away, and then I'm going to go and get the cake out, and then the next step is we're going to frost it together. Well, I took the cake out of the freezer, and I wanted to try a few of them first to see what, you know, worked best for me. The first time I used my frosting knife, it worked, but Richard suggested me using my tongs, which actually worked fairly well. So that's what we're going to try to do. Is this cake defrost, though, it might be a little, you know, too rough on it.
You're going to have to work fast.
Yeah, you sure do. So... and then you just put it in your nuts. And I tried it with the tongs and the nuts. It didn't work as well, so I preferred it just doing it like this. Now these peanuts, I put them in my food processor, and they were ground up within 30 seconds at the most. There were a few little big pieces, and I just picked those out. Kind of remind me of the nuts you would roll donuts in, or when you buy a nutty donut. So
those are dry roasted nuts. They have sea salt on them, or just?
They're salted. You know, you could do it without the salt on it, but this recipe, just reading it, I think this is supposed to be more like sweet and salty, and that's why I picked the salted. But see how easy this is, you guys?
Pretty easy.
It's a little messy. It would be fun to do with children. I think they would enjoy it. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to do this, and I'll be back as we're doing the last one, and we'll do it together. Well, I have one more left to do, and as I was doing it, yes, the tongs worked, but this seems to be a little quicker for me, so I just switched to a spoon, and I'm just spooning it over, and it seems to work for me a little bit better, and I don't mind getting my hands dirty.
Whatever works.
Yeah, if you're a cook that doesn't like getting your hands dirty, the tongs probably would work best for you, but as far as I'm concerned, this is part of cooking, and just make sure your hands are clean when you start. But it took me about 5, maybe 7 minutes to do those, so you can tell that it doesn't take long.
There's 12 of them.
Mm-hmm. And I put these nuts in a pie plate. And then I just kind of lightly tap on the nuts so that they stay. Well, I do have some nuts left, but we can use that for something else, like a coffee cake or something. There. So, anyway, these need to dry. I did put a piece of wax paper underneath to help catch everything. And because I am about cleanup, try to make it as easy as possible. But you can see my hands got a little dirty, but that's fine with me. And so we'll let these dry for about 15 minutes or so, and I'll be back to sample. Well, they have set on the rack for about 15 minutes, and then I moved them over to this nice tray. And I'm going to go ahead and sample one for you. So you can just take a look at it there. Smells like peanut butter.
Yeah, it does.
I was thinking last night after I had made the cake, and what I did is I cut it into pieces. There was 12 of them here in an 8x8 pan. And then I wrapped that in saran wrap and then put my lid. It's a Pyrex bowl, dish, and has one of those rubber lids that goes on it. So and then I put that in the freezer. But as I was doing all that, I was thinking you could easily do this with like walnuts, pecans, almonds. If you were going to do it with almonds, I would definitely suggest putting some almond flavoring in it. But anyway, I'll quit rambling about that. Oh, one other thing. Richard had asked me yesterday about the Blarney Stones. So I decided to look it up. It's the castle is the Blarney Castle, and it's located in Cork, Ireland. And the Blarney Stone is about 4 feet tall and about a foot wide. And you do have to lean backwards. Now they have, you know, like wrought iron bars that you hang on to, and people will hold your legs for you as you're leaning back and kissing on it. But anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you. So I'm going to go ahead and take a bite of this.
Only 4 feet tall.
Yep. Well, it's just a piece of stone that made the castle.
Oh, when you said lean back yesterday, I thought maybe it was taller than that. Anyway.
You guys. Look at this. It is so moist and so delicious. Kind of reminds me a little bit like the nutty donuts we used to get up in Michigan. They would sell them. They're like a cake donut though, and they're so good. Oh, little Lucy, she probably wants a piece too.
Either that or she needs to go out.
Those are nuts. And you can tell I just, you know, ground them for like 30 seconds in the food processor. That's all there is to it. And that cake and that frosting, it's sweet and salty. All of that's combined. I would definitely make this again. This is definitely a keeper. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. And if you have, give me a like, and comment. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please do. And share with your friends. We'll talk to you later. Bye.